This little stream in northern St. Louis is called Coldwater Creek. It starts at around the airport and travels 19 miles until it reaches the Missouri River. And in 1989, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, or USACE, was working on a flood control project on the creek with the local communities. The local communities, by the way, are St. Anne, Hazelwood, Florissant, Old Jamestown, Blackjack, Spanish Lake, and a couple others. One day in 1989, they're forced to stop working due to a report that came out by the Department of Energy, or the DOE, that claimed there was radioactive material in and around Coldwater Creek. Now, these rumors aren't new. People had claimed for years that there was something in the water. But the government said the area was safe, so a lot of people went about their lives. But now enough people in the area were getting sick, like cancer sick, that the Department of Energy decided to step in. And what did they find? Let's take a step back. In World War II, the U.S. Energy Department hired a company called Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals to produce uranium for the Manhattan Project. Making uranium creates a byproduct of radioactive waste, by the way, and you can't just throw that away, so what do you do with it? In 1947, Mallinckrodt and the Missouri Energy District created the St. Louis Airport Storage Site, or SLABS, on the northern border of the airport. At that point, the only people really living up around the airport were the families of people contracted to work on planes and vehicles during World War II. But there were still enough people around for them to know what they were doing, and they did know what they were doing. We know this from a 1946 memo from Mallinckrodt that said the material was so toxic that it did pose a threat to workers. Mallinckrodt stored waste at SLAPS from 1949 to 1966, and they transported the radioactive waste from the plant to the site in uncovered dump trucks, one of which crashed and spilled its load in Hazelwood in 1953. Local firefighters hosed away the waste and told everyone it was safe. In 1965, a survey of SLAPS showed that 20 years of refining uranium had created 120,000 tons of radioactive waste. Mallinckrodt decided to stop processing uranium in St. Louis, bury the facilities at the SLAPS site, and sell some of the radioactive material to the Cotter Corporation, who buried it in two places: Laddie Avenue in Hazelwood in 1966 and the West Lake landfill in 1973. It's important to note three things here. First, this is all still being transported in uncovered trucks. 2, burying radioactive material in the ground does not make it less dangerous. And 3, they didn't have permission to dump radioactive material at the Westlake landfill. This was illegal. At the site of Laddie Avenue, material was processed and eventually shipped somewhere else, which also doesn't make the area more safe now that it's gone. Radioactive waste from the SLAPS and Laddie Avenue sites made it into the ground and into Coldwater Creek, and I don't need to tell you how bad this already is, right? Ground contamination is really bad, but water contamination means the contamination moves even faster. And it's also worth noting at this time that I didn't tell the whole truth earlier. It wasn't just families of servicemen living in the area. St. Louis has a strong black population that, through generations of segregation, had moved to the north part of the city and county. In the 1970s, partly due to the failed Pruitt-Igoe project, which I'll do another video on later, a large number of black residents moved into the areas near the creek, namely Spanish Lake. I could write a book and a half on racial tensions just in St. Louis, which I won't, but just so you know, that's a component here as well. So, 1989, Department of Energy comes out with a report that Coldwater Creek's radioactive. They trace the material to the dump sites, which points them to Mallinckrodt. Again, the government and the companies knew there was material in and around the creek, but they considered it, quote, a safe amount. This is the first time somebody's actually come out and said, maybe it's not a safe amount, though. In 1990, the EPA puts the entire 19-mile creek on its list of Superfund sites. Quick side note, Superfund is a program by the EPA that helps clean up sites that are contaminated with hazardous materials. This isn't terribly relevant, but you should know there are more than 1,300 active Superfund sites in the nation. 33 sites are in Missouri, and 9 are in the greater St. Louis area. You want to have a really bad day? Go find the one that's closest to you. In 2004, Mallinckrodt employees who worked with the uranium become eligible for compensation if they can prove how much radiation they were exposed to at the time. I have no clue how you'd prove this, by the way. Sound off in the comments if you do. In 2006, the EPA proposes cleanup plans for 2 parts of the Westlake landfill, and in 2008, they actually make the cleanup plans and show them to the communities. The communities hand the plans back and say, you need to be way more specific with how you're going to do this, and the EPA says, okay, and gets back to work. During this time, more and more people are noticing an alarming increase in cancer rates, birth defects, etc. In 2010, an underground fire breaks out at the Westlake landfill a quarter-mile away from the radioactive material, which gets everyone's attention again for a while. As of 2023, the fire is still being contained, by the way. In 2012, the CDC says the USACE was working downstream from the waste sites and noticed a large level of contamination So they started an investigation. In 2014, the Westlake landfill installed an extraction system to control the toxic fumes from the fire, and over the next couple years, the USACE and the CDC confirmed a link between the community's health problems and the creek. They also found low levels of a radioactive chemical at a park near a grade school in the Hazelwood School District. In 2018, a decade later, the EPA comes out with its revised cleanup plan. And over the next couple of years, they work with the landfill to more clearly define their already revised cleanup plan. You hear that, right? In 2022, radioactive material was found at the edge of the elementary school property. The USACE tested it and said it's no more dangerous than other schools. The same year, the Hazelwood School District contacted a private company to come test it. They did and said, actually, it is dangerous. The Hazelwood School District closed the school and relocated students. The USACE, by the way, was still saying the place was safe. In 2023, the U.S. Senate passed a bill for a federal cleanup of the school, which they turned into a storage facility. In July 2025, Harvard published an extensive study revealing that if you live within 1 kilometer of Coldwater Creek, not lived or used to live, but live, present tense, you have a 44% higher risk of overall cancer. Further information on all this can be found at the links on my website, along with the transcript of this video. The same year, this year, the EPA rolled out another revision of its plan. After 18 years of dragging their feet, they announced that making the waste sites in Coldwater Creek safer will finally break ground in 2027.